Since 1972, the McIlvaney Financial Group has been a conservative, contrarian investment firm. With that mindset, they have created a multifaceted approach to portfolio management, offering a wide array of services including hedging through precious metals, wealth advising, a unique short fund, and an excellent educational resources. We have had David McIlvaney on our show multiple times because we respect his outlook, viewpoints, and recommendations. You really need to take advantage of the free portfolio risk analysis and bank safety ratings they're offering our listeners. Just call them at 1-800-525-9556, and you will be put in touch with an advisor with years of experience who can take 15 minutes and give you a much better understanding of what true portfolio diversification is. Again, call them at 1-800-525-9556 and benefit from their expertise. Hi, everyone. This is Jason Burack of Wall Street for Main Street. Today's special guest is a first-time guest. He's a living legend, modern-day statesman similar to Thomas Jefferson, author of over 10 books, including End the Fed, Liberty Defined, and The School Revolution. He ran for U.S. president 3 times in 1988, 2008, and 2012. He was a U.S. Congressman for over 20 years. He does the Ron Paul Liberty Report, and he founded the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. He's the face of the Liberty Movement. It's an honor and a privilege to welcome Dr. Ron Paul to my show for the first time. Dr. Ron Paul, thank you for joining me.
Great. Nice to be with you today.
Now, Dr. Paul, I want to ask you about President Trump. Has he done anything you like so far?
Oh, he must have. I have to stop and think about it. My problem is sometime one day I'll say, this is pretty good. What he's doing is the right direction to go in, but then the next day that might be reversed. So I can't consistently say that I know what he's going to go and I can endorse his policy. The one place where I've been most supportive of has been his dealing with Russia. And right now he's back on track with at least talking with the Russians, and I think that's good. But there was a time when he was much more favorable, then he got more belligerent with them, and now, of course, today Tillerson is meeting with Lavrov, and maybe something good will come of it. But he talks about lower taxes, but we have to see it. A lot of politicians talk and they're not capable or they're not serious about it. So when he talks about less taxes and less regulations, I'm all for that. He at one time, especially in the campaign, talked about even supporting auditing the Federal Reserve, but I don't think his heart's in that. I think that was more political. But he will be better, on the economy. I certainly hope than the other option we had, in that he knows a little bit about spending and regulations, but right now overall he doesn't come very close to a libertarian person trying to change our country in that direction.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of your points. There were some people out there, some libertarians who switched and flipped and voted Trump at the end because they were worried if Hillary Clinton had won, how much worse things would be. And they were comparing Donald Trump to you. I don't think he's you. You hold to your positions. You are a man of principle. I don't see that with Trump. I see him as more of a deal maker, some guy who's willing to compromise a lot of things to get deals done. So I think with the tax cuts, that's going to be bogged down for years, I think, and I think it's going to lead to worse stagflation. And, even if he does get corporate tax cuts for large corporations and small and medium-sized businesses, Dr. Paul, I think we're going to see, VAT taxes 15 to 20%, which is going to hurt people on Main Street.
Yeah, that's right. And he does not emphasize, nobody in Washington is serious about emphasizing the important issue, and that is spending, because you can talk about lowering taxes, and we always should, but what we need to do is stop the spending, because spending, as soon as the money is spent, it becomes a tax one way or the other to the people, because they either have to take it out of the system through taxes, or they have to borrow from the system and then pay interest and somebody else pays it back, or they just send the bill to the Federal Reserve and then the Federal Reserve monetizes and prints the money. All that adds up to being a tax. So people who talk about cutting taxes with the idea that it'll stimulate the economy and make government get bigger and have more revenues and pay all the bills, I think that's a dream, and I think it's misleading. If cutting taxes help the economy and revenues went up, that means good. Got more spending.
Yeah, I think that, unfortunately, Dr. Paul, I think the best case with all this central planning interventionist economics from central banks is worse stagflation coming. I want to ask you now about, you mentioned earlier in the interview about Audit the Fed. Do you think your son, Senator Rand Paul, and Representative Thomas Massie will be able to get another Audit the Federal Reserve bill passed, and will President Trump support it?
I'll have to guess they have gotten it passed just, I guess, out of committee in the House. And it's possible they could pass it in the House. I doubt that the Senate will pass it. If they did, I don't think the president would sign it. I mean, there's too many big actors in this, big players, that depend on the Federal Reserve System for the bailouts that everybody knows will come, and that the difficulty in changing over from a fiat system to a sound system, there will be ramifications. It's sort of like a drug addict getting off drugs. And everybody thinks, well, he should be off drugs. But yes, there will be some side effects, and the economy would have a lot of side effects, and that's why politically it won't be done. So they would always argue that it's too difficult, and the people won't adjust to it. So that's why my prediction is that the spending will continue, and the economy will finally break down, and then there will be a time when the economy is so bad that government will have to do something, to maybe change our attitude about what the government should be doing and change our understanding what monetary policy is all about, and maybe come a little bit closer to what the founders intended, and that was not to have a central bank and not to print money and to have only gold and silver as legal tender.
Dr. Paul, do you think 100 years of Keynesian economics is responsible for a rapidly deteriorating U.S. economy?
Interventionism, which Keynesian economics is all about, yes, that's it. It's the appetite for getting something for free that they work into the system. They teach that deficits don't matter. The Federal Reserve is legitimate. Printing money to cover the debt is okay. It isn't like it's just a political stunt. It's been designed philosophically by the economists like Keynes and also Paul Samuelson, who taught a lot of his book was used in most of the universities over the last 50 years or so, and it teaches that's the economics that is prevailing. So it's not a Republican or a Democrat thing. It's this understanding of interventionist economics of the Keynesian type, and that is the reason that the solution has to come philosophically, and it has to be accepted by those people who call themselves Republicans or Democrats, and the ideas have to infiltrate both. Be just like both parties, although they fight over power, they don't fight over the issues. The strong support for our empire overseas, and strong support for spending and deficits and the Federal Reserve and monetizing debt. So that attitude has to change, and that's why I'm so eager to continue to talk with young people, because they're much more open to seeing what's coming, because they're going to get the bill, and they're more open to thinking about it in terms of free market economics and sound money. People who are locked in, let's say Trump is sympathetic, but he's in a position now where the ramifications of adjusting would be so politically overwhelming, he won't be able to touch it.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, the Republicans and the Democrats seem like two gangs of rival pirates who don't disagree on that the money should be stolen. They just disagree on where the money should be spent after it's stolen.
There you go. That's a good one.
Why do you think the Austrian School of Economics is the best economic school for understanding how the economy, money, credit, and banking really works?
Well, there are two theories on why, and actually libertarians are a little bit divided on this. One is because it works the best, and that would be Mises's point. He demonstrates that if you do A, B, and C, good results come of it. And if you do something different, if you spend money and print money and run up debt, something else happens. And he looks at this system, and in a very pragmatic, utilitarian way, he can show why Austrian economics is very, very beneficial, to the maximum number of people, and that is the only system that allows the middle class, to grow in size. But there's another group which accepts that whole argument, but adds another justification for it, and I'm more or less in that group, and that is that there's a moral principle behind it too, that we have a natural right to our life and our liberty, and we have a natural right to the fruits of our labor, and that everything we earn should belong to us and not to the government. Right now, it's argued that the government owns everything, and they'll tell you how much you can keep under what conditions. And I base my thought on the fact that it's the principle of liberty, and it comes from a source outside of government that will provide you with the tools and the understanding of why the markets should work. In either way, I would never argue with the person that, Austrian economics and free markets are beneficial because they work, and I agree, but I'm also emphatic that my liberty is the most important thing, and even if I had less material goods, if I were perfectly free, I would opt for that. But we don't even have to worry about that. The wonderful thing is, if we accept this principle of personal liberty as a natural right, you're endorsing the best economic system. So that's why we should win this argument on moral grounds as well as economic grounds.
Yeah, I found the Austrian School of Economics after the 2008 financial crisis. I was a stockbroker. I didn't like the answers that I was getting from the mainstream financial media, from the talking heads on TV, from Wall Street and Keynesian Economics that I was learning in my MBA classes. So, I started learning Austrian School Economics. I found it through Peter Schiff and you, and it started to make a lot of sense. So, things that make that much sense, unlike the Keynesian models, their economic models, which have an extremely poor track record and make things worse.
Yeah, and I think you used the right word. It doesn't make any sense. And I always enjoyed it when young people would come up to me after I spoke on college campuses and say, this is not that confusing. This is just common sense. And in many ways it is. It seems bizarre to believe what the Keynesians and the economic planners believe, but it's common sense to believe that maybe working hard and saving money and investing and not allowing governments to counterfeit money, it really is just common sense. And then if you had some other personal goals like limiting our exposure overseas and limiting our empire, this would do it, because they wouldn't have the money to do it. If they had to tax us every single day for everything that we do overseas, the people would rebel. But they can delay it and dilute it and hide the people who really suffer. See, the young generation right now, so many people get out of college, they don't have jobs, they're going back home living with their parents, and they're sort of invisible people, and yet they're paying the bills of this system, which seem like it's going to be magic. All we have to do is follow this Keynesian idea, and you can have everything you want, and you'll have maximum prosperity. But right now, the evidence is clear, and that's why our message is so important right now, because there will be more and more people listening. Like you started listening at a time when things just didn't add up. Well, next go around, things are going to be worse, and they better start looking toward a much better answer. And the founders were on the right track, but I think the understanding of free markets are, much more developed than ever before. Monetary policy is better understood. So I think we're much further along in the understanding of free markets and personal liberty than we've ever been in the history of mankind.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, unfortunately, a lot of people in my age demographic, I think they're brainwashed. They've been going through government schools all their lives and university professors who hate capitalism. So they're unfortunately blaming free markets and capitalism for problems that free markets and capitalism didn't cause.
Yes, and the mistake, if you want to give them a slight pass, is that they'll come along and they actually believe that the problems we have, they blame on capitalism, but it's not capitalism they're blaming. They're blaming it on the corruption in business, in economics. The people who are corporatists. They believe in the benefits given to the corporations. It's sort of a fascist type of system, and then they say, "Oh, the free markets fail." Like you hear that all the time right now. Well, we have to have Obamacare. We have to have a one-payer system because the market has failed to deliver medical care. Well, up until the time government started getting involved in the 1960s, medical care was delivered pretty well, and it was much cheaper, and it was doing fine. So, but they like to use this to say that free markets fail, but it's crony capitalism that's failing, and this is the one opening that we have to some who lean toward, they're more emotional and sympathetic, and they want to help the downtrodden and all, is to say, yeah, we don't like these corporations making the benefit. How about the banks? How do they make money? Off a monetary system where they help create the money out of thin air. So there are times when you can reach out to young people if they'll listen, and they might be more inclined to say, maybe they're right. Maybe the libertarians are right. Maybe it's a system that encourages this warmongering. And if we had restraints on government and government spending, they wouldn't be able to do this. So it's clarifying this, but not letting them ever get away with arguing the case that it's capitalism that's failing. It's crony capitalism that's failed.
Switching gears, you were able to get a one-time partial audit of the Federal Reserve after the 2008 financial crisis. Over $19 trillion in near interest-free bailouts were given out to foreign governments, foreign central banks, and large corporations. Do you think a lot more free money and credit than $19 trillion has been given out by central banks since the 2008 financial crisis to delay the next major global financial crisis?
Well, it's hard to say because it's ongoing. There's a lot of shuffling. They could put money in here and take it back out here. And I think anybody has it, but it's hard to believe it could be a whole lot bigger. But the problem is it's constant. And the economy has improved. There's a little bit more stability, so the activity is a lot less than it was in 09, 010, 011, how much money was being churned. But no, it's many, many trillions of dollars. So it's the process that is the problem. And rather than, I don't think anybody can come up with an exact number, but it's huge, and it shows why the economy is so fragile, so much debt, and so much malinvestment that the market will demand to be corrected.
Yeah, I mean, all these bubbles, Ron, it's not just the United States. China, I think, printed about 28 trillion in RMB after the 2008 financial crisis. Japan is a mess. The ECB has printed, I think, $1 trillion in their version of quantitative easing program in 2017. So, I mean, welcome to dystopia. It seems like these guys can get away with creating almost unlimited currency units to boost up asset prices.
Yeah, they've been able to do it, but it always fails in the end. So people are euphoric right now. They're euphoric and think it'll last forever. But they say, well, this time it's different. I think it's different this time, too. I think it's much worse because on the short run, they can manipulate and convey confidence and print enough money that people are talked into sticking with the system. But that just makes the bubbles more numerous and bigger than ever before. But they cannot stop the correction. Once you distort the economy by the printing presses and the credit creation, you have too much debt and you have too many mistakes, too much malinvestment that eventually brings the economy down. And if you look carefully at some of the statistics now, the economy isn't quite as healthy. They do admit the GDP might not be growing quite as much, but if GDP numbers are probably worse than they admit, I think the inflation numbers are worse than they admit. So there's a lot of weak spots out there, but eventually it quits. The market is more powerful than the planners. There was one time when they absolutely declared that the dollar was worth $35 an ounce, and the Austrians predicted, no, it can't last. It's going to break down, and it has. Even no matter how much they tried to fool the people into believing it, the deceit and the distortions won't last. The markets eventually will rule out.
Do you think politicians and central bankers will continue to change the rules to delay the next financial crisis as long as possible?
No, I think they will, sure, certainly. They're going to do whatever is possible, and they'll print forever. So that means they'll just keep pumping, and they can do that all the time.
Do you think a monetary reset or a new global monetary system is inevitable then?
Oh, absolutely, it will be, because this one will fail. The big question is will we wake up and do the right thing? We may wake up and tokenly do something. So far, Venezuela hasn't wakened up, and I don't know how well they're doing in Zimbabwe. But most of the time, we went off the gold standard at the Civil War, at the time of the Civil War, and we were off for about 15 years, and we woke up and went back on the gold standard. It was a non-event, We will wake up, but there's no guarantee. The only thing that'll decide what happens is how many young people are educated that are in the position of influence, either in government or in education or in philosophy, to say, well, you just can't make token adjustments with the Federal Reserve policy and regulate the Federal Reserve or restrain them in certain ways and think you're going to come up with a solution. When people lose confidence in the currency, you have to get a new currency, and most of the time it demands that the currency be sound and connected and associated with a precious metal.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, I'm really worried that the central planners in the United States are going to try to do what FDR did in 1933, and when nothing else they try works, they're going to go to the financial nuclear option and just start devaluing currency against gold again, and then move gold up to a much higher price, but then try to tax it or confiscate it.
Yeah, that's a big problem. That's why the more people own gold, the merrier, because there'll be more resistance. That remains to be seen, but that represents the attack on our liberties here at home, and that unfortunately has been a steady erosion, in the last couple decades. So that's why it's a big job ahead of us to try to get people to understand what true liberty is all about and a willingness to defend it.
I have one more question for you before I let you go. Based on your extensive experience working in Congress, how corrupt is Congress and the bureaucracy in D.C.?
Well, the ideas are totally corrupted. Everybody who endorses the Federal Reserve, I don't see them as personally corrupt. I think their brain is corrupt because they have been brainwashed into it. So that is most of the problem. There's a bunch of corruption. Most of it is in political power. The raising of money and supporting the party and voting the way they tell you to do so that you can get a better position in Congress to help your people back at home, and they feel like, well, that's my job. I'm representing the people. I'm supposed to get the stuff for my district. So the corruption, I think, is ideological. I don't think that there's a large percentage of people who just walk away from Congress with a ton of money in their pocket. A lot of times, though, the corruption leads them to adjust very easily. They go to Congress, and they leave, and they become a lobbyist, and they make a lot of money. That happens, and that's a form of corruption, but it's not like somebody stashing away money in a Swiss bank account. That's not it. To me, I see it's mostly a corruption of ideas.
Yeah, I think the bureaucracy, Dr. Paul, I think there's tons of Wesley Mouches because I've lived around D.C. too. I think there's a lot of people that want to block innovation and progress and free markets, unfortunately.
Right.
Well,
okay.
Well, I want to thank you for everything you have done, including being the face of the Liberty movement for so long and for waking up so many people, and I hope to have you on again in the near future.
Oh, good. Nice being with you today.
Wall Street for Main Street needs your help. YouTube stole $7,200 from Wall Street for Main Street in annualized YouTube AdWords revenues, and they kneecapped our analytics down by more than 80% across the board since September 2016 with their new censorship algorithms to stop the rapid growth of our channel. That was money we could have used to upgrade our website, pay bills, and invest in improving our content and growing our business. Our audience of loyal listeners is all over the globe, and so large now that if most or all of our listeners were to commit to donating $1 to $5 each month to our Patreon account, we could easily meet our goal on Patreon. Wall Street for Main Street also accepts one-time donations on our main wallstreetformainstreet.com website. That's WALLSTFORMAINST.com website via PayPal, Gold Money, or Bitcoin. We also accept donations of physical precious metals that can be mailed to us. Thanks to all listeners who have already made a donation, and thanks in advance to any listeners who make a future donation or contribution to the growth, improvement, and success of Wall Street for Main Street.